So let's go first into what are we adding into the classrooms? And some people always go, Josh, what does VTC stand for? VTC stands for video teleconferencing. So you've learned a new acronym for today. Definitely something, anytime that we talk about teleconferencing in those spaces or video teleconferencing, that's what we mean when we say VTC. All right, so let's talk about what's going into the different rooms. And I'm going to tell you that we've done modifications to about 250 rooms across campus. That doesn't cover the entire campus, but it covers a big portion of the classrooms that are out there. And I will tell you, this equipment was extremely hard to procure. Everyone in the world wants to get their hands on video cameras and mics. These businesses it's just been extremely hard to get them in. We still have stuff that we are receiving to this day, and we're only a week away from school. So we are down to the wire on receiving equipment and getting it installed in your spaces. I will tell you, I've said in earlier presentations that we were hoping to try to have everything done in all the classrooms by the end of the day on August the 7th. That has been pushed back a little bit. We're going to have to be working into the weekends on multiple classrooms, and we're probably not going to have almost all of the classrooms done until August the 10th, Monday, August the 10th. So I'm going to tell everybody, when you get in and start getting ready to practice in your spaces, wait until next week until you check out those spaces. It gives us time to get most of the technology distributed and out into each of the different rooms. An important concept to start thinking about, especially since we're a week away from school, it's always a good idea to visit those spaces, do some practicing, make sure that you're comfortable with the technology. So out of those 250 rooms, we actually have 4 different types, and basically we've categorized them in 4 different ways. Each one of those rooms has a standard set of technology that we're placing in them based on their function and type. Now, keep in mind that 250 rooms across campus, each one of them are configured differently, the lighting's different, the uses are different, the size of the seating are different. But by the way that we set these up with the standard equipment, it should cover those rooms in that best particular fashion. So let me cover those types of rooms. One, we have classroom spaces that have AV in them already. That's what we're standing in right now. In Reese Jones Hall, we already had projectors, we already had projection equipment, we already had DVD players and document cameras and a Crestron control panel and computer. All that stuff was already installed in this space. So we've added specialized equipment to create this VTC experience. We also have classrooms that had no audiovisual equipment in them. We are going to put a different package in them. You have to imagine all the work that we have to do on the summers when we put wiring in to put in all this AV stuff. We had to come up with some solution to try to solve a problem for those spaces as well in order to be able to put AV into those areas. We also had lab spaces. These are areas where it wouldn't actually make sense to put a fixed camera because the rooms are very specific about where you have to move around, what you have to show. There's all these little nooks and crannies, I think, that are important to the online virtual experience that you're going to need to represent to those students. So we're going to have a very mobile situation that's put in these lab spaces. And then last but not least, we have some non-traditional spaces that faculty will be teaching in. These are rooms that were never being used as classroom spaces before. Some of them had AV, some of them did not. Well, we're going to be putting a standard technology package in those spaces. So out of these 250 rooms that we're adding or updating equipment to, there's also an additional 30 or 40 rooms that already had VTC equipment in them already installed. If there was already camera and mic equipment in a space, we did not touch that space or change it. So the expectations of what you did in those spaces is exactly the same. And we'll talk a little bit about those later on as well. So when you look at your classroom space, it should fall into one of these major categories. And when I go over what goes into each space, you'll get a better understanding of the equipment in those areas. All right, so let's just jump straight into it. So traditional classrooms with audio visual in them. You're gonna get a back-facing camera, a front-facing camera, and 2 mics in the room. So and I get questions all the time from individuals going, Josh, why did you put 2 different cameras in the room? Completely different from each other. Well, in this particular case, some of it really gets down to that procurement capability. We could not get enough cameras in of what we wanted in order to be able to duplicate that experience in every classroom. So we had to go to another vendor and try another product. So we're gonna be installing a camera at the back of the room, a camera at the front of the room, and 2 hanging mics in the ceiling to cover that space. This is the technology that both Lauren and Sharon and Art and I are using in this room right now to present this presentation. That's exactly what we've done in this particular space, paired in with the traditional audiovisual equipment that's already here. The next section is really kind of covering classrooms that had no AV in them. And what we're going to be doing is putting in this really cool new line TV, which is an all-in-one TV with touchscreen interface, a microphone array, 2 front-facing cameras, and a built-in computer, all on wheels, all in one unit. So we can wheel it into a space that didn't traditionally have AV in it. All we need is power in those areas in order to make that work. So those are really going to be some cool pieces of technology. I will demo that later in the advanced section to give you an idea. We're only putting those in about 20 or 30 rooms across campus, so you're not going to see them in many spaces, but definitely something to be aware of if you go into one of these rooms. Okay, so let's talk about lab spaces with or without AV in them. In this case, we're going to be putting something that's a lot more mobile in place. We're going to be putting in a single camera with 2 mics and something on a mobile medical cart. So I'm going to change the view on mine and really think about this mobile medical cart. I'm going to change my view back over to me. Consider that I'm on a rolling cart right now. If I had a pole with a camera, I could stick my laptop down, plug in the mics and the cameras, and take my rolling cart anywhere in the room. And I'm actually going to change the view. And if I decided that if I was in the classroom and I wanted to go over to Sharon and show something that Sharon was doing, my camera would be on the cart. I could immediately take it in and show something that she was doing without having to be in a situation where you have a fixed camera in the room that you've got to rotate or move. So that gives you some complete flexibility in lab spaces. Now, all the concepts of how to control the cameras and manage the cameras are all going to be exactly the same. So we're not going to bring one of those into the room to show you how they work. Just imagine it's basically a laptop with a mobile camera on wheels. It's very much similar to this lectern that I have right here, but much more enhanced. So really just kind of giving you an idea of what we're doing in those spaces that's a little bit different. So I'm going to go back, share my screen again. So you should see my screen. And then for the non-traditional spaces, we're going to be putting in those new line TVs that I talked about, those all-in-one units that are very cool. You'll really love those when we get the opportunity to show you more about them.